Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to get this podcast episode going. But before we start, I do have a little something to share, and I'm going to be vulnerable about it. I have been MIA for a few months. I want to say like 6 to 8 months. And the reason being is because I actually fainted and I hit my head. I went to the ER and everything, but they misdiagnosed me or they just did not treat me as a concussive patient. And so I didn't find out that I had post concussive syndrome until 2 months later after I visited my neurologist. Now I know what you all are thinking. You're like, oh my God, that's really traumatic. And yes, it is because it did a real number on me, my self esteem, my mindset, like just me, myself, and I. Like it did a huge number on me. I had a hard time moving. Talking was just kind of challenging for me, and I was trying to push through this like really hard. And I just kept getting frustrated with myself because I kept thinking about how my past self was this way. Like I was like, I used to be able to do this, like my old self, like this is not who I used to be. I want to be this, I want to be that, yada yada yada, right? And I get it. Most people who are on the mend, they do tend to turn to their past self as a marker or as a guideline of where they want to be. Like, how do they get back? How do they come back from something that was traumatic? And yes, I know that hating myself throughout that process is totally the opposite of my mindset, total opposite of my mindset. And in that moment, I just could not see myself coming out of it. And I feel like that hindered me. It hindered me a lot. And this is what the episode is built around, right? Is the experience of having this traumatic thing happen to me. And I'm, I kept comparing myself to my present self to my past self. And therefore, I kept doing this endless pursuit. Like I kept chasing my past self and I kept comparing my past self to my present self, and that just kept on, and that just continued the abuse. Like I just continued to mentally abuse myself in that way. And I came to a point where I was like, am I in an endless loop? Like, am I a hamster on the wheel just really not going anywhere? Because I'm constantly chasing after something and it's actually really nothing. So I turned to Athena Village, which is a mighty network community that was built for women and women who are in business. And it was all about empowering women and supporting women and everything. And I really do appreciate all of the women in Athena Village because I shared my story with them. And I was openly vulnerable, because I'm giving you guys a shorter version. I was openly vulnerable about my struggles, about what had happened to me, and how I just did not feel like my normal self. And they were also gracious to me. They were super supportive. And they told me to give myself grace and to be more gentle with myself. And that's just because time was just the only thing that was stopping me. But the problem is that in that moment, I was like, but with that time, I could be bettering myself. I could have been using this entire time to actually do something to improve myself, to build a better version of myself. And I know what you all are thinking right now. It's like, what? What was going on? And if you're keeping up with me, great. The one thing I learned is that my past self can be hindering. Like, it can be a hindrance if I let it. I I let it hinder me by allowing myself to compare my present to my past. And the other way I was letting it be in power was just using it as the standard. Like, this is where I had to be at. And it was and it's an unrealistic standard, and here's why. You can't go back in time. You can't reverse time to a point where you were at where exactly where you were at that point in time. There's just no way. And I guess as an example, I'll put it this way, and I'm not saying that this is a direct example, but this is just the concept. When people want to lose weight, the first thing they think of most of the time is, I want to get back to the weight I was in high school, and I want to be just as healthy as I was in high school, or something to that effect, or in college, or something around that timeline. It's a timeline that was way, way, way back. And the thing about it is, yes, for some people, they are able to pursue that. Yes, they are able to get there. But the thing about it is, some people use it in a different way. So I'm assuming that most people who use that as a motivation, and they also use it as a way to build a better version of themselves. Like, they say, this is my foundation, this is what I want to lay it on, right? My work on, and then they build themselves. But then there are other people who are just endlessly pursuing it, not laying down any kind of foundation, but they keep comparing their present self to their past self. And then so that's how they don't follow, they're unable to follow through with that goal of being able to be their past self in high school, that past weight in high school. I'm not saying that this is for everybody. This is just a perspective slash concept. I'm not saying that everybody is like this. I'm just sharing it because I feel that there is something to be learned here. And I feel that everyone should know that if you are running a business, if you are trying to do whatever it is that you're trying to do, don't try to be your past self. It is not a healthy thing to want to be your past self. It's an unrealistic thing, and I have now deemed it what I like to call an endless pursuit. And I call it endless pursuit because I was trying so hard to reach out to be my past self, and I can't. But what I did realize was that I can be a better version of myself. I can move forward. And you're probably like, whoa, what? What's the problem with comparing my past self? Like, what's the problem with using my past self? What's the matter with wanting to be my past self? I'm not saying anything's wrong with being your past self. It's amazing. I am sure that version of you was amazing. But what if there could be a better version? And the thing about this whole entire thing too is that most people tend to look back over their shoulder because they've seen where they've been. So it's easier for them to compare themselves to something like that. But people have a much harder time looking forward into the future and imagining what their future self will look like. For some people, they struggle exactly of how they want to be as a person. Maybe a goal of where they want to be at, but as a person, I feel like people have a hard time conceptualizing how they want to be in their future self as a better version of themselves. And I'm going to tell you right now, your past self hinders you from being your future self. And that is the main reason why. It's because people tend to compare themselves, people tend to try and chase it when they should be laying their groundwork for something better. So, yes, your past self can hinder you. But now I'm going to tell you how it can empower you, how you can use it to empower yourself, motivate yourself, support yourself, and actually use it as a foundation to towards building a better version of yourself. So step 1 is to realize the fact that you are comparing your past self to your present self. And that habit needs to stop. You need to stop thinking that I used to be able to do this, I used to be able to do that, or I was really good at this and now I'm really bad at it. Stop. Don't do it. Just stop it and just know that you are doing what you can because your present self is making room and opportunity for you to do more and be more amazing. Okay? Like if you lost the ability to do something, I guarantee you're going to find the ability to do it better, or you're going to find something else that you are really good at and then you're going to be like 10 times better. Like no doubt, right? The other way that you can actually use your past self to empower your future self is that you can write down how you want to be better, right? So let's just say for me, I'm like, all right, I want to move on a daily. Like I need to move more, right? And I'm not saying I want to lose weight. I already know, right? I'm not trying to lose weight. I'm just trying to move. I'm just trying to be active. I'm not setting any kind of goal set in stone. And if I wanted to say where I want it to be, I want to be at a healthier point in my life. Like I want my health to be in a better standing. So I'm going to say, all right, my future self moves. My future self moves on a daily. And I would sit and meditate about how I would picture that being. And I could say walking around every morning, doing a little quick walk around, like 5 minutes, and then working up to 10 or 15 minutes a day. And I could spread it out throughout the day, or I could do it all in the morning, or I could see myself doing it all in the evening. I really need to write that down, and then I need to picture how I see that happening, right? And once I do that, then I can start putting that into action. And once I start putting that into action, then I can check in with myself a week later and look at my past self of when I wrote what I wrote and check in and say, hey, have I taken some steps towards this goal? Have I at least walked for 5 minutes? Okay, great. I'm working towards it. It's happening. And I can write down, I have currently done 5 minutes a day, or I did 5 minutes every other day. Whatever it may be, I'm going to timeline it, right? So I start at my base. Keep that as your base. That is your goal. That is your marker, whatever you want to call it. It is your timeline space. You can write past self was healthier, so future self should move 30 times like 30 times a day. Excuse me. up to 30 minutes a day. And then I will start on the next line, write the date for next week, and check in and say, hey, I have moved, at least on every other day. I have spent at least 10 minutes focused on just moving around. And then I would continue to do that, just a weekly check-in to say, hey, I've been doing this thing. And then next thing you know, you're going to be like, hey, I've actually done it. I've actually done what I wanted to do. My past self used to not move that much. My past self used to move 0. And now I'm moving this much. And you can use it as a way to improve, right? Or make better. So you can say, hey, my current self is moving. Sorry, excuse me, I'm mixing myself up. My current self is moving only, for 15 minutes a day. I would like to picture my future self moving 30 minutes a day. And then you can do the weekly thing of weekly check-in and say, hey, I actually have a habit of moving for at least 30 minutes a day. And just focused on walking. And that's how you can do it. And that's how you can say, I have improved my past self. I have made a better version of myself because I am actually working towards where I want to be, which is I want to be healthier. So I have moved from being only 15 minutes to half an hour, and that's double. That's double. And wouldn't that make that better? If your past self was only moving 15 minutes a day and now your future present self is moving 30 minutes a day, wouldn't you call that a huge improvement? I would call it a huge improvement. And that's how you can use your past self as a way to empower you, because that way you can feel like, holy crap, I actually moved the bar. Like I actually pushed past what my past self couldn't do, my present self has made happen. And that's how you can use that as a way to empower you. And even if it's not 30 minutes, say the gap was like 20 minutes, you can still sit there and say, that's better than where I was last week. And you know what? It's okay if you have a drawback. You're like, you know what? I dropped back down to 15 minutes. It was just a really busy week. Like, make a notation of why you didn't do it. And of course, don't use it as an excuse, but use it as a benchmarker to say, okay, well, I didn't do it this week. What went wrong? Maybe I could try increasing it by like 2 minutes, next week instead of rushing it. Because for some people, everybody goes at a different pace. So if you are the type that can add a minute every other day or something, do it. But if you are the type of person that needs like a week time span to actually implement something slowly, that's totally fine too. You go at your own pace. Eventually, my whole entire point is eventually at the end of the road, you are going to reach your future self that is going to be the better version of you. And there's nothing sweeter. There's nothing more motivatingly charging about being able to reach something that you wanted to do and couldn't do at the time, and now you're able to do it. Like, it's super empowering. That is one of the many ways you can use your past self to empower your future self. And I want you to continue with the mindset that it's not, your past self is not a bad version of you. It's just a way to build a better version of you. You don't really like building anything. You already know. Building anything, you always got to lay out your foundations first and then you build up. But the thing is that as a person, you have to recognize that your past self is going to be your foundation towards your future self. So you have to build that foundation, and you have to accept the fact that you're not going to be able to be your past self, but you can build to be a better version of your past self. And don't use your past self as a comparison in a negative light, a negative comparison. You can use it to compare yourself to measure. You can use the comparison as a measurement of who you were and where you are now. But don't use it in a negative way. Because as soon as you use it in a negative way, you're empowering that negativity, and therefore you're feeding into it, and then that's when everything starts to drop. And that's what I realized in the moment that after I had that conversation in the Athena village, that it was the moment that I had the epiphany, and I realized that I was feeding the negative. I was feeding the negative mindset of comparison. I really was. It's kind of like that thing where you go on social media and you see all these people super successful and everything. That feeds the negative mindset. Because then if you start, as soon as you start comparing yourself and saying, oh my God, I wish I could be like her, or, oh God, I really want to be like this person, da 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 da. As soon as you say it in a negative way, if you have any kind of negative, you know, envy, as soon as you envy, then it's not good. But if you're like, wow, I really inspire to be someone like her, that is when it's okay, because you're not giving it any power. You're giving yourself power because you're like, hey, I want to aspire to be someone like her. Like her. Not exactly like I don't, like, I'm not saying I want to be her. I want to be like her. You still always want to be yourself and not somebody else. And I hope that this whole entire, conversation that I'm putting out there, I hope this resonated with you. I really do hope that it gave you some kind of piece of tidbit experience or advice. And just be gentle with yourself throughout this entire process. It's okay. It's okay to fail. Just get back up. That's all I have to say about that. But thank you so much for listening. I hope to catch you in the next one. I am really working on trying to get this podcast back up since I have been out. So, again, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great one.